Hey guys, what's happening? Today we are going to talk about board and train. I have been getting so many questions about board and train. Board and train, board and train. Worth it? Should I do it? Board and train? Why now? OMG, I think I've gotten so many questions about board and train because a lot of people got their puppies in the spring, possibly during quarantine, and now those puppies are getting a little older and people are like maybe needing a little assistance and wanting to know whether board and train is the answer. Well, I am going to go into all kinds of questions about board and train. We're going to talk about the pros, the cons, what to ask, and then I'm going to tell you about my experience with board and train. Hey, welcome. It's Nicole from Dogo Argentino, USA. Thanks for joining me. This is the channel where we chat about dogos for education, admiration, entertainment, and lots of fun. And just a little housekeeping. April Frost won my 3,000 subscriber giveaway. So April, get in contact with me so I can send you your Gonut toy. Okay, so board and train. First of all, what is it? It is literally where you turn your dog over to a trainer. The dog lives with the trainer for 24 hours a day for a certain period of time. It could be 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, or longer. And during that time, a professional dog trainer works with your dog. So what is required for your dog to get involved in a board and train? Well, first of all, you want to make sure that it's a reputable board and train. And one of the things that you need to have is vaccinations, particularly kennel cough. You usually need to provide food for the period of time that the dog is going to be away so that it doesn't have any digestive upset. Oftentimes you need a flat collar, a leash, a bed, veterinary records, emergency numbers, just like you would if you were dropping your kid off at summer camp. You want to make sure, God forbid anything happened, that the trainer is as prepared as can possibly be for your dog. Hi, Emma. The next thing you want to figure out is what exactly is taught at the board and train. Now, there's beginner board and trains, there's intermediate, there's advanced, and they can cover a wide variety of topics, everything from basic obedience like sit and down to advanced things like protection, nose work, those types of things. So you want to find out what you're getting for your money for sure. Okay, so let's look at some of the things that are really cons about board and train. So the very first con to me, the thing that you should really think about is that the training process is an incredibly bonding experience with a Dogo Argentino. They're very affectionate, they're very pack oriented. If you aren't the one doing the training, then the dog isn't bonding to you, it's bonding to a trainer. So that means you're not being set up as the pack leader, a trainer is. And I think that's, to me, the number one con of a board and train. If you are not being set up as the pack leader, that doesn't help you bond your dog to you. So that's the number one con. Another con, many trainers are not going to be familiar with the temperament and disposition of the Dogo Argentino. These are not Rottweilers, they're not Cane Corsos, they're Dogos, and they do have differences between other guardian breeds. And so a trainer that's unfamiliar with them may not really understand where they're coming from, and I think that puts the trainer at a disadvantage and puts the dog at a disadvantage. Because if you treat the Dogo Argentino exactly the same as, say, a Rottweiler, you are not going to have the most optimal results you can have. I'm not saying that the dog can't learn, but there are differences in breeds, and that's why we talk about temperament. And the Dogo is incredibly strong, but it's also actually very sensitive and very, very affectionate. And I think that sensitivity is often... I'm being smelled. I'm being smelled. I think that sensitivity is just sometimes really discounted, and people teach Dogos more harshly than is necessary, and that is offensive to the Dogo because they are really actually very soft-hearted dogs. They're really, really sensitive. Yes, they can be stubborn, but they don't tend to respond really well if you're all stick and no carrot. So if the trainer isn't familiar with a dogo, it can be a problem. Okay, if you think you're not going to have to put work in to train this dog just because you send it away to a board and train, completely false, 100%. You are definitely going to have to put work in, because no matter how long the trainer has the dog, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks longer, you still have to establish yourself as the pack leader, because chances are at the training facility, the dogo is going to perform perfectly for the trainer who took the time to bond and establish itself as the pack leader. You're going to have to make that establishment happen in your own home. Hi, Zeus. Hi, buddy. Who's your good boy? Okay, you have the con of having no control over how the dog is treated. None, because you're not there. So there would be that, and that's why it's so important to make sure that you're getting a reputable trainer to work with your Dogo Argentino. If I haven't mentioned it, dogos are really, really, really curious. Really curious, because they're really, really intelligent. So they always want to know what's going on. So I don't usually shoot in this particular corner of my home. They are freaking out. Most board and trains, a con is that the dog is actually going to be confined for up to 22 hours a day. It really isn't that useful to teach a dog over about 4 hours per day, because the dog needs to assimilate the information. And if you just keep working it and working it, it actually results in a worse experience, not a better experience in terms of obedience. So up to 22 hours a day, your dog could be in the kennel. The trainer is only going to be able to achieve so much in the period of time you buy. So if you buy 1 week, you're not going to have the results of someone who took a dog for 3 months. So do bear in mind there's a limit to what any trainer, no matter how good, can achieve, because ultimately it's not the trainer that controls how quickly things are learned. It's the Dogo Argentino dog. Another con, it's extremely expensive. It can easily be more than the cost of the Dogo Argentino itself. I've seen a 1 week board and train for around $1,200. I think the maximum I've ever seen advertised online for a board and train was like $5,000 or $6,000. So it's extremely expensive, extremely expensive. A lot of times more expensive than the dog itself. Of course, another con is that dogs don't generalize well, and this kind of comes into the pack leader situation. So in other words, a dog in a certain environment may be taught to perform a certain behavior, let's say sit. Inside a training ring, in a building, the dog might sit just fine for that particular trainer. You take it home, you think your dog can sit, you try to sit it outdoors in a field and it doesn't do it. Or you try to have it sit in your living room and it doesn't do it. It's because generalization is not something that any dog does well. And that can be a plus and a negative depending on how you look at it. Oftentimes, if you are training your dog for protection, you don't want it to respond to other people's commands. So if a burglar said sit, you don't want the dog to listen. You want the dog to listen to you. Well, dogs don't generalize, but in a board and train, you're asking it to generalize. You're asking it to learn a series of behaviors and commands from someone else and transfer them to your home and your people. Dogs don't do that well. And of course, the final con of a board and train is that you're separated from your dog. And that separation can be extensive. It can be 1 week, it can be 2 weeks, it can be 3 weeks. You can be separated for a while in a board and train. You don't know what's happening with your dog during that time. The dog could be being treated badly. Maybe the trainer has too many dogs. These are cons that you have no control over. So that is something to bear in mind. Okay, so let's talk about the pros of a board and train. It's incredibly condensed learning. So if you are needing to go on a vacation, it can be awesome because they can get condensed learning while you're gone, and it's much better than just boarding your dog somewhere where they're not learning and exercising their mind. Many board and trains are going to have guaranteed results, and they will often have video updates just to ease your mind about how your dog is being treated, how it's learning, and you can actually see the dog itself learning, so that is a plus. A reputable trainer is going to be better than no trainer at all. So if you do a board and train versus training your dog yourself, that's still going to be better than doing no obedience training at all. And it's more likely to get you the companion that you dream about rather than the nightmare that you fear. One great thing about board and trains, they can be totally tailored to what your dog needs. So if your Dogo Argentino is pretty good on sit, but the recall is weak, they can concentrate on that area because you're going to have the dog tested to see what it does and doesn't know when it's admitted to a board and train. So that's a plus. If your dog is shy or if your dog is slightly aggressive, you need to be completely honest so that they can tailor the appropriate learning program to your Dogo Argentino dog. Now, hopefully, you have done your research, you've gone to a reputable board and train, and your handler is going to be highly experienced in many different breeds, hopefully including the Dogo Argentino. I personally would not be very keen on sending my dog to a board and train if they had no experience with Dogo Argentinos because, of course, they are somewhat unique. Yes, they are a guardian breed, but as I mentioned earlier, they are different than a Rottweiler or a Cane Corso, and I would want somebody that had experience. Hopefully your trainer has lots of experience training lots of different dogs, and chances are, if they're a professional, they do this day in and day out, and they're going to know the most efficient ways to train your Dogo Argentino to be the companion that you want, or the protection dog that you want, or the hunter that you want, depending on the type of learning program that you've engaged in. Board and trains can be highly effective because that's all they're working on. They're working on obedience. That's what they're doing. So you're paying for that efficiency of learning. Okay, so some questions you need to ask before you get involved in a board and train. The very first thing I want to know, do you have experience with Dogo Argentino dogs? Because again, I wouldn't be really keen on sending my Dogo Argentino to a trainer that had no experience with Dogo Argentinos. I would want a reference. Hey, can you tell me somebody that went through the board and train? I would like to talk to them about their results. You would want to know what type of training method is used. So for example, you would want to know if they were training on a choke chain, on a prong collar, on an e-collar. What type of training are you going to have to continue when you get the dog back? You would want to know what the conditions are that the dog is kept in. When my dog is not actually being obedience trained, where is it? Is it in a kennel? Is it in a run? I would just want to know that. I'd want to know what the trainer's qualifications are. How long have you been doing it? Are you somebody that has any certifications? Like, do you know dog CPR, for example? I would want to know what the background of the trainer was. I would want to know how many dogs were trained at any given time. Is my dog a rotation of 1 of 20 dogs, or is mine a rotation of 2 or maybe 3? I would want to know that. I would want to know if the program was guaranteed. If I'm sending it to learn sit, down, place, heel, come, or recall, I would want to know, is there a guarantee that the dog is going to know that? And what happens if I need to use that guarantee, meaning the dog is not responding to the things I paid for? What is the method by which I am going to get a brush-up lesson? Is it you take the dog? Is it I take the dog? What's going on? I want to know what the guarantee. I would want to read the contract before any money was exchanged. I'd want to know what was involved. And I would also want to know if there was some sort of training of me so that I knew how I was going to reinforce the training with my Dogo Argentino dog. So let me tell you my experience. I have had 2 out of my 3 dogs placed in a board and train. They used off-leash e-collar training, which is what I wanted. The least expensive program, I caught it on a sale, was $2,200. The most expensive program, same length, but I didn't catch it on a sale, was I believe about $3,300 or $3,200, somewhere in there. I used a 2-week program. This is not a sponsored video. I did use off-leash canine. I was very, very happy with them. Now, I have a background in training. Why did I use a board and train? I used a board and train simply because prior to the board and train, I had very limited experience with e-collars, and it was really important to me that my dogs were obedient off leash, and I was prepared for the negatives of the board and train. I knew the dog wasn't going to be flawless and a lot of reinforcement was going to be used. I personally liked it. I would do it again. It worked well for me. My dogs were treated well. I was updated regularly. I had video proof. My dogs knew what they were doing at the end, and it was great. My local trainer, if you're in the Northern Virginia area, was Robert Hayden. He was fabulous, and I would do it again. Now, let me know what you think about board and train. Have you sent your Dogo Argentino dog? Is it something you would consider? I really think that the most important thing you can do for your Dogo Argentino to make it a good family member is to obedience train it. Whether you do it yourself, whether you send it to a board and train, obedience training is so very important in terms of making that dog understand what is acceptable behavior inside your home. So let me know what you think, guys. I appreciate you as always. Hey, do me a favor, like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Let an interested party know about my channel so that they can soak up the Dogo love. Hey guys, have a Dogo-tastic day. Thank you so very much.